Today I'm going to be doing a very simple beginner-friendly sewing pattern tutorial. This is not my pattern. This is by Effortless Patterns. It's called the Jara top. It's just like a cute asymmetrical, has a little cutout. I'm gonna be modifying it a little bit. So if you're also curious how to take any sewing pattern that's like a top style and turn it into a bodysuit, and yeah, so that's what I'm gonna be doing. So I'm using this white stretchy fabric, and here are the pattern pieces. There are 3 pieces. What I'm going to do is use this bodysuit pattern that I already have. It's a little bit wider, but something that you can do with sewing patterns is just use another one as like a pattern block to just get the general idea of what you're trying to cut to modify. So I want to turn this one that ends right here into a bodysuit. So I'm just holding up this other bodysuit pattern and just sort of tracing it. It's not gonna be exact, but that way I don't have to measure or totally reinvent the wheel here. So I'm just gonna cut this out. You can see I'm just moving the bodysuit piece over and adjusting as needed to make it fit the same width as the top and cutting the rest of the way. Every time that you are self-drafting or doing what I'm doing where I'm kind of eyeballing things, definitely fold your pieces in half and adjust the edges to get symmetry on both sides. Obviously this is an asymmetrical top, so I'm not going to do that to the top portion, but for the rest of the garment, I'm going to just make sure there's symmetry here by folding it in half. Then just trimming where there's any uneven parts like I'm doing right here. And then once I'm done with this, that will be the back piece. There's 2 layers of fabric, and next I'm moving on to the front where I'm cutting out this top piece. I'm not doing any modifications to this part where it's just the top strap, but I will be modifying the bottom pattern piece where I'm turning it into a bodysuit. So what I'm going to do is lay out this bottom piece, and then I'm using the piece I already cut out for the back to lay it over, line up the top edges, and then trace this rather than tracing my bodysuit paper pattern. Since I adjusted the sides and cut for symmetry, I want it to be even now with the piece I already cut. So I'm just laying this out, making sure it's flat, and then I will cut and trace this. I did make the bottom part a little bit longer just to account for any additional space I might need since I'm eyeballing here, but you can always trim that later if you need. Here are the pieces I end up with. There's 2 layers for each on all 3. To begin, we are just going to sew. See how it has this little cutout here and here? That's where we're going to sew. I am going to clip just to hold everything in place and also make it a little bit easier to see where that sewing line is going to be. So we're going to begin by sewing together this and this piece, not these parts right here. I am using my serger here. I'm using my Singer Making the Cut serger. I find sergers work really well with stretchy fabric because they have a little bit of stretch in the stitch, but you can definitely use a regular sewing machine as well. You might want to consider a stretch stitch or a zigzag stitch. I would probably recommend a stretch stitch though. So now on this front piece, this is already sewn. Now just going to sew these 2 sides together. I did that off camera, but you can see I sewed those together, and now we are just flipping this piece right side out and just pulling it through, and now you have this top piece all nice and put together. Move that piece over to the side and take the bottom part of the front, fold back the layers, and then line up the edges and flip it upside down so that the curved part are lined up, and then the side edges line up those as well with the seam touching, and then just make sure everything is even and flat. And there should be 4 layers of fabric on each of these side pieces, and you can see I'm really taking my time just making sure those middle seams are lined up and all 4 layers are clipped together nicely, and then you're just going to sew each of these sides. So I'm using my serger here, and you can see I'm just checking to make sure all 4 layers are getting into this seam, and then it should look like this at the corner. Moving on to the back piece, sewing the 2 armholes, if you will. I didn't record it, but here's how it turned out. And then we're going to do the leg holes of both the front and back. So just running this through my machine, again using the serger and making sure the 2 layers are in there. Now that the front and back are assembled, we're going to turn one of them right side out. It doesn't matter which one. I'm turning the front right side out, and then putting this between the layers of the back pieces and lining up all of the edges carefully. The edge of the side should have 4 layers. Actually, the whole thing should have 4 layers of fabric. and then just making sure that all 4 layers are getting clipped in here. And then we're gonna sew the sides and the shoulder strap. And then for the bottom of the garment where your snaps are going to be, I just finished off by tucking in the edge and using my sewing machine. And now I'm gonna use snap tape, and I cut the width of the bottom and I'm clipping it on, and each side is going to get a piece of the snap tape. And what I did was I actually used my zipper foot so I could get closer to the snap tape where the button is, because last time I had some issues with that. So I found this to be a lot easier, so I could go around this rectangle and just attach the snap tape. Snap tape is definitely my favorite hack I found recently. Speeds up bodysuits so much. And here's how it turns out, and here is the final garment, and I'll try it on.